This is a foreign place for me, standing in front of you all with a microphone, a podium. I want to say it may be our first event since a year ago. And from obviously, I think I know most of you all, but if you don't know me, I'm the provost here at the Seminole campus. And I'm kind of like giddy, almost like a kid on Christmas, to finally see people again in this room. But for those of you watching online, there's several of you there as well, which is kind of where we're at today, right? And I actually wrote a script, Dr. Oliver, and it's been over a year since I had to write a script, and I almost didn't know where to begin, right? But so we are so honored and pleasured to have Dr. Parrish with us here today. Like I said, it's been a long time coming to have a group of people join us and have a healthy discussion on the state of Florida. But it's also healthy to get back out, to take your mask off, to sit with one another, to have fellowship, to have something to eat. That's so important, and I know that we will continue to get better at this and possibly open our doors fully come fall. That's the hope, and fingers crossed. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to rise so we can do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, to kick things off, and of course, this is in partnership not only with the Seminole Chamber of Commerce, but also the Institute for Strategic Policy Solutions. And, you know, I didn't recognize the dignitaries, but I appreciate all of you being here today. It means a lot. But I also want to give Kimberly Jackson the opportunity to do an introduction as well. She's our executive director for the Institute. Kimberly, thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I would have to say that I agree. It's been a year, and it's really nice to see actual people in a room. So thank you for taking the time to come out and to have a hopefully interesting conversation with Dr. Parrish, who we are so grateful that you took the time to come to our college. As Mark said, my name is Kimberly Jackson. I'm the executive director of the Institute for Strategic Policy Solutions, or as we call ISPS. ISPS is a think tank that was created by Congressman Bill Young. The goal was to have nonpartisan discussions, in-depth discussions on social, political, and economic issues that will allow us to understand the appropriate scope of government. So while we're housed in the Seminole campus, we reach out to the region, throughout the state, and nationally, and we partner with our congressional leaders here, currently Congressman Charlie Crist and Congressman Gus Bilirakis. We have a wonderful board, and we invite you to learn more about us at isps.spcollege.edu. And with that, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Jerry Parrish. I'm so grateful for the Seminole Chamber of Commerce allowing us to share this time and asking me to moderate. Thank you, Tara, for working with us. And I'd like to say that it was very nice meeting you this morning before we started. And at his request, I'm going to abbreviate his very long and interesting bio because, of course, he is a man with a lot of achievements. But Dr. Parrish, as you all know, is the chief economist and the director of research for the Florida Chamber Foundation. This is huge, as I've learned, because we don't have any other chief economist leading a major chamber of commerce. So we are privileged to have that as leadership in our state. He was previously the chief economist and director of the Center for Competitive Florida at the Florida Tax Watch. And prior to that, he served as associate director of the Center for Economic Forecasting and Analysis. Of course, he has a PhD, but he is very proud to work as an adjunct in the Masters in Applied Economics program at Florida State University. So with that, I'm going to abbreviate this bio and let us start this conversation with what is going to be a wonderful presentation and questions. We would invite you to provide questions. We have teams who will bring the questions to me so we can ask them if you have questions after his presentation. Thank you, Dr. Parrish.
Thanks for having me. I think I'm going to stand up if you guys don't mind to talk about what's going on. Let's talk about what's going on in the Florida economy. I want to talk about COVID and what its effect has been. And I also want to give an outlook of how Florida is going to do over the next few years here. First of all, let's talk about the organization I work for. I work for the Florida Chamber Foundation. and we're part of the Florida Chamber, is the umbrella group we're part of. And my job is literally only to do research. I give a lot of speeches too. I'm glad to be back out on the road. I appreciate you guys having a live event. I always like to get out around Florida and meet some new folks. But my job literally is to look 2 to 30 years in the future and look at solutions for issues Florida's going to have, even before we start to have them. And when we come up with those solutions, we literally hand them downstairs to the Florida Chamber that does advocacy. They work with the legislators. They try to get the right policies in place and make sure the legislators punch the correct red or green buttons when it comes time to vote. We've also got a political arm, and their job is to go around and find the right people to run for statewide office. It's easy to find people that want to run for statewide office, but we want the ones that'll put Florida's long term in front of the short term. And so that's how our organization works. One of the things we did a couple of years ago at the foundation was we decided to do a privately funded strategic plan for the state of Florida. You can let the state do one for itself, or you can, which maybe they might not set the bar very high. But what we did was we went to all 67 counties. We got more than 10,000 people live in rooms just like this. Probably couldn't do that today, but we had a lot of folks in a lot of rooms in every county doing town halls. And we wanted to talk to them about what kind of Florida they wanted for the future. And so we came up with this project called Florida 2030. And there's, you can see the what the cover of one of the reports looks like there. And in that, we set up a bunch of goals. Where do we need to be by 2030, and what are the goals that are going to take us to get us there? One of the goals was, and you may not know this, Florida, if it was an independent country, we'd be the 17th largest economy in the world. And that shocks a lot of people, even Floridians, and maybe even especially Floridians. They don't realize what a big deal we are, but we're a lot bigger than a whole lot of countries out there. Our goal is to take Florida to the 10th largest economy in the world. And basically that means we have to grow to be the size of Canada, and we have to, pass quite a few countries along the way. But it is possible. And here's what the 39 goals look like. You can see that in the report. You can see it at florida2030.org on our website. But it has a lot of goals in all the 6 pillars of the Florida economy. I'm not going to read all of them to you, but there's a couple I'm going to talk specifically about. One of them's education. We're in a great educational venue here. This is a really nice auditorium. Glad to be here. But one of the things we have to think about is long-term economic development. If Florida had the best workforce in the world, people would flock here and to hire our people. And they already do that. We already have a great workforce. We have the top state college system in the entire country. Florida's 28 state colleges are #1 of any state, and we should be really, really proud of that, and we are. We've got top universities, but where it starts is kids getting ready for kindergarten. Are they ready for kindergarten when they get there? Our goal is to have 100% of those kids ready for kindergarten when they show up. Another big goal that I'll talk about later is 3rd grade reading scores. We want 100% of our 3rd graders reading at grade level. And you may say, wow, that's weird for a state chamber to even be talking about education. What is the big deal about 3rd grade reading? Well, the big deal is 3rd grade is typically where kids go from learning to read to reading to learn. And so if they hit that milestone and they're ready at 3rd grade, that's a great indicator of what their future success can be. So a lot of goals, I'll talk more about more of them later. But when you have goals, you got to keep score. So how do we keep score? We keep score with the Florida scorecard. And this is a website. When I came to the Florida Chamber a little over 6 years ago, my #1 job was to get this site up and running. And we had a site, but we wanted to make it user friendly. And so this is a free website. You can see it at thefloridascorecard.org. There's state level data. I'll show you county level data here in a second. But there's a live population counter on there. There's a color scheme that says red means we're going in the wrong direction. Green means we're going in the right direction. And you may be able to see on that second row down there, 3rd grade reading scores is one of the most prominent metrics. And you see that 100% goal right below it. But these, on this, you can find things like, hey, Florida's got a $1.11 trillion economy. Before COVID, we had 900 net new people a day moving to the state. they were bringing with them $1.19 million worth of adjusted gross income. And that's a big deal. You know, people with money, weighted by money, moving to Florida. And if you click on that little box or any of the boxes, up will come up a chart, typically a live link to where the data comes from, if one's available. And on that one, if you'll click through it, it'll go to the website called How Money Walks. And you can see for your county, weighted by money, where you're losing people to and where you're gaining people from, and whether you're net positive or not. Another thing, since 2015, Florida was creating more than 1 out of every 11 jobs. That's a big deal. Florida's about 5% of the U.S. economy. 1 out of 20 would be average. We're way above average. And the good news is that's going to help us. That momentum we had before COVID will help us return to those kind of job numbers in the future. Now, if you clicked on the Pinellas County, there's a little box on the top right that says View County Metrics. You get the front page of Pinellas County scorecard, and every county's on here. There are heat maps where you can spy on your neighboring counties to see if they're doing better than you are or you're doing better than they are. Those get a lot of uses here. But you can see, some of the numbers are red here. The job numbers year over year actually went up. We actually did get job numbers this morning. So this will change as of today. The February job numbers were released at 10 o'clock. So this will change a little bit. If you go and look on it here in the next couple of hours, they'll be updated today. But, always available. If you click on the gray bar, the 6 pillars of the economy, even at the county level, are available there. So if you click on talent, supply, and education, you'll get all the 3rd grade reading scores and 8th grade scores and math scores and high school graduation rates and, all those things. Percentage of people that have associate's degrees, tons and tons more data there, much more than we have time to talk about today. Now, I want to talk about COVID a second. I'm very happy. I'm always happy when a data set is retired because there is a reason for it. And this is one that we've been tracking through the whole bit of COVID. That's the number of hospitalizations. How many people are currently in the hospital in Florida with COVID? And you see we had a big peak back last year. We had another peak in January of this year. They've actually stopped counting this because this was created to make sure our hospitals didn't get overrun. You saw what happened in Italy. You saw what happened in New York back in the old days. This was a big deal. Now, because of vaccinations, because Florida's doing really, really well, dropping substantially in number of hospitalizations. My own local hospital up in Leon County, where I'm from, in Tallahassee, announced last week that they had exactly 0 cases of people with COVID. So you'll see that happening. I'm very excited. That really sets us up for going back to normal, more normal situations here. Now, it has had an effect on jobs, though. This is a series that we use a lot as economists, the seasonally adjusted non-farm job series. I wanted you to show that because I wanted you to see what a steep drop-off we had and the fact that we certainly have recovered a lot of jobs, but recovery has been a little slow last couple of months. But there certainly are good reasons for that. But the good news is Florida actually is better off than most states out there when it comes to the job recovery. And certainly that's something that is certainly important. But it really matters a lot, different of what part of the state and what part of the economy you're in. Here's the month over month changes. You see the big drop in, starting in March and then in April, nearly 1.2 million jobs lost in April. And then as we opened up the economy, about 500,000 of those jobs came back. But you can see, we going a little positive, even a couple of minor negative numbers. Those numbers don't, they're kind of rounding error numbers. When you do a monthly one, that doesn't necessarily mean it's negative. It will actually be revised in the future. So maybe slightly positive. However, we did have a good job number in February where we grew, looks like about 17,000 jobs if I saw it right this morning. So Florida continues to recover, but here it is by industry. And I want you to see this because this is actually important. Year over year, and this is through January of this year, and we just got these numbers a couple of weeks ago, down 6.3% of jobs year over year, no longer in Florida. Well, leisure and hospitality is almost half of them. I don't think that's going to surprise anyone. when you're so dependent on visitors from other states and other countries. A couple of years ago, Florida had 113 million visitors from other states and other countries. And last year we had less than 70 million, and a substantial number were from other states, and a lot of it is drive-in. And I'm going to show you how it's affected different parts of the economy here in a minute. But when you lose those visitors, you know, they're responsible for about $6 billion in state tax revenue a year and about $5.3 billion worth of local tax revenue. So if your economy is highly dependent on those visitors, think about the Canadians. You know, during the second and third quarters of this past year, Canadian visitation was down 99% year over year. Literally. International, other countries, non-Canada, down 90+%. And those people stay longer and spend more. So they're really an important part to a lot of businesses there. But you can see the percentages there: construction, manufacturing, financial activities, getting close to back to normal. And I expect that to continue here. However, when it comes to leisure and hospitality, I did my forecast this year at our Economic Outlook Summit in January. And I forecasted we wouldn't get all of our tourist numbers back until the first quarter of 2023. So 2 years. What does that mean? Well, it means there's a whole lot of pent-up demand out there. We're getting visitors coming back. So it's just by the time we get to that 131 million visitors a year, it is going to take a couple of years. And remember, a high percentage of those are international. But we got people flying in. We got some people for spring break. Maybe you saw what was going on in Miami the last couple of weekends down there. They're coming to Florida. But in majority are flying people or people that own homes here that maybe had to skip a year, but will be back this fall. So, you know, the good news is these will recover as people come back to Florida. All right, but it really depends on where you are in the state. If you're looking at the map, this is a heat map. The darkest areas have the highest percentage job loss. No big shock. It's Orlando and Miami-Dade. So you can see Pinellas is only down 2.1%, where Florida's down, you know, more than 500,000 jobs. So much less affected. You got to remember, though, you know, one of the things, leisure and hospitality is a bigger category than tourism. Right? You know, leisure and hospitality is you guys going out to dinner and going across the state and visiting friends and spend the night in the hotel. Visitors are people from other states and other countries. And so, you know, the hotel I stayed at last night, they said was full. I think that's an indicator that those people are coming back. And certainly with the beautiful weather down here in Florida, we do taunt our friends up in New York and other places substantially. I sent out a little tweet last night from the view from my hotel overlooking the bay. The little boats are out there, and you can tell, you know, people are out at the pool. So we need to taunt them because we want their tourism money to come here. So year over year job changes, not so bad here in this region, but certainly as you go toward the Orlando and Miami area, much worse. Another thing you got to watch out for, though, is when you count unemployment rates, and Florida's is down substantially. You know, last month I saw Florida was 4.8%. You know, New York and California were in the 8s and 9%. But you got to remember, if you leave the workforce, you're not counted. So you got to remember, year over year, Florida lost 390,000 people out of the workforce. You know, Florida grew. There were more people moving in, so it's an even, you know, bigger number. But there's that many less people in the workforce here. Where are the big effects? Same areas: Orlando metro area, Miami-Dade. And what's happened is we got good national numbers on these. About 80% of the people are nationwide, where we have good data, are females. And a lot of them left the workforce to take care of kids that could no longer go to school every day. So we've got a workforce out there in most places. And you can see Pinellas percent only down 1.2% year over year, one of the strongest areas in the state of Florida. Although, you know, there were some that were, you know, positive. You know, there were 20 counties that were actually positive year over year. But what that means is there's a lot of people out there that may well want to come back in the workforce this fall. So when you see the unemployment rate go up this fall, it's not necessarily a bad sign. It could be these people actually returning to the workforce. So it matters what industry you're in. It matters where you are in the state of Florida. it really matters what type of job that you had. I don't think this is going to surprise anybody. Florida has more high-wage jobs now than we did before COVID. 5.6% increase. That's a big deal. That was true in June. That's nothing new for Florida. We're doing better than most states. You can see the legend down there. High wage job from this group is a 60,000 and above job. Low wage is 27,000 or below. And the medium's in the middle there. But you can see the low wage jobs have taken the biggest hit. Probably not a surprise. These are service industry jobs. A lot of them, tied to tourism and those kind of things. Check that against how the U.S. is doing here. Florida is actually positive on high wage job. The U.S. is down 1.7%. Middle wage job down almost triple what, or probably triple what Florida's is on a percentage basis. And low wage jobs in the U.S., that's more than 28% of those jobs that are no longer here. So even though Florida has taken a bigger hit here, certainly we're better off than the U.S. average here. And, you got to give credit where credit's due here. Florida kept its economy open. Very controversial. I hear a lot of people, and saying, oh, but this and oh, but that. I got in a spat with the Wall Street Journal. I don't know if you saw my article, my response to them here recently, where they're talking bad about Florida. And it's like, hey, it's not true. Here's the numbers to prove it. Florida's actually doing better. So it looks like that was the right decision here. And, I work for 501c3. I am not political at all. I'll tell you both the good and the bad. That's what economists do. But in this case, what it looks like is Florida has actually done substantially better. And it's because we've kept our economy open. All right. So it matters what level of wage job you are. It matters where you are. It matters what industry. It also matters substantially what size business you work for. We did a report. We released it at our Future of Florida Forum last October. We combined with Florida's SPJC, that's the Small Business Development Center, and a group called the Haas Center at UWF, University of West Florida. Who's the Haas Center? They're a group that's been there for 26 years now. I just happen to be the chair of their Council of Economic Advisors. So when I asked them to join in on this study, they were surprisingly ready to go at a moment's notice. It's easy when you're the chair to get cooperation, I have found out. But they're a great group, and we combined and polled the Florida businesses and asked them how they were being affected. We also did some other research, and I wanted to know this: what percentage of Florida's net new job creation comes from small business? Well, first of all, you got to weigh through. There's a lot of research and literature out there. First, you got to define small business. You can go with the federal definition, which is often less than 500 employees. Well, a business that's got 400 or 500 employees, 4 to 499, is not that small to me. So what we did is we concentrated on those businesses with less than 100 employees. And that's who you see the answers from. About 54% of them were just concerned about staying in business. Normal times, you're concerned about your workforce, you're concerned about taxes, government regulation, all those things. More than half of them were just concerned, and this was last summer, last August and September, can we stay in business? Let's be blunt here. A lot of people used up their family savings and maybe their kids' college funds to keep their business open. Fortunately, with Florida getting back to business, a lot of those businesses are still around that may not have otherwise been. But you see that number, that's tile on the scorecard there, 59.9%. That's the 2019 number of what percentage of net new job creation comes from businesses with less than 100 employees. That's a big deal. Only about a third of Florida's private sector workforce work in this category, yet 60%. And so when you go to the next one, that's from 2012 through 2019. What you saw first was just the 2019 number. So overall, even 60% comes from those businesses that size. That's why they're so important. They're certainly important to families. They're a great wealth generator and provide opportunities for kids coming out of school and own family members. And it may be, in a lot of cases, somebody's first job out there. So that's where you get your training to become a good employee. So I made a heat map for every single county here. you'll be able to see, your county, what percentage of the private sector workforce works in businesses of these size. And you can see it looks like 34.9%, if I'm reading that right, in Pinellas County. It's typically smaller numbers in the bigger areas that may have bigger companies in them. Pretty high in the rural areas. You can see the dark rural areas up there, what the percentages are. So matters what size business you're in, matters where you are, it certainly matters what industry you're in. It has had a wide-ranging effect on Florida. So I'm glad that it looks like we've got COVID under control. The vaccinations are out. I got one myself. I was absolutely pleased to get that over with. I got a Johnson & Johnson shot a couple of weeks ago, and I'm ready to get out and travel again. And I know a lot of people are too. There's a ton of pent-up demand out there. People have been stuck in their houses for a year. You watch, it's getting crowded again down here. So when I say not 100% of our visitors will come back for 2 years, you're going to see a big bump this summer. You'll see another big bump in the fall and winter out there. And it could come back earlier than 2 years. That was just my forecast. Remember, I made that in January when, we were going to get vaccinations, but we had no idea that they would get rolled out as quickly as they are. Now let's talk about some of the opportunities for Florida and some of the challenges that we've got. Everybody knows Florida's been growing. 2012 through 2019, Florida was the number 2 state in population growth, only second to Texas. But in growth rate, to have such a big state in the top 4 in growth rate, that is amazing. Who grew faster than us? Utah, Nevada, and Idaho. Where did those people get their population? Californians running from high taxes. That's exactly what's there. So that's been a lot of where the growth rate is. Certainly we get growth from all over, not so much just one state like they do for mostly. Where does our come from? Well, here's the top 10. You can see it. Top net migration, 2012 through 2019, New York State by far number 1. Puerto Rico is actually number 2. Remember Hurricane Maria? That sent a lot of people here. But you can see New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Ohio. It's the high tax states. People are flocking to Florida. They're bringing their businesses down here. They're bringing private capital. Anytime you bring private capital and put it to work, people go to work. So that's been a very positive thing, but it's also a challenge. What our political people tell me about is, wow, all these people are coming from New York. How are they going to change Florida? Now, I know y'all talk about the politics. I don't. So I'm going to take a really hard pass on that. But I'm going to tell you what the population estimates are for last year. 2020 is kind of weird because we had COVID going on. A lot of those people were moving here to Florida for jobs, but still Florida was one of the higher percentage growth states. About 241,000 people, about 660 net new people a day moving to the state of Florida. What's most interesting is where the next ones are going to move. And so I use a set of data that comes out of the Bureau of Economic and Business Research, BEBR, out of the University of Florida. I know there's at least one Gator fan in the crowd, so go Gators. Even though I do have a job, I get a paycheck from Florida State University. It's okay for me to say that because I'm actually an Auburn guy, so I can pull for both schools down here. Well, what's important is the next 4 million people, and this is a heat map. The darker areas are going to grow at the higher percentages. You can see Osceola County, St. John, Sumter, Walton, Flagler. Why is Pinellas not in there? Well, hey, a lot of Pinellas is already built out, right? So there's not that much room. There's going to be more people, but it certainly is one of the lower ones. What's interesting about this map is, out of the next 4 million people, take a look at that top 4 around the left, Miami-Dade, Orange, Hillsborough, Broward. They're going to get more than a third of the total population increase according to this forecast. That's a big deal, right? Wow, more than a third in just 4 counties. Remember, though, this is a pre-COVID forecast. I'm gonna throw a curveball in here for you. But the top 7 counties getting almost half the expected population growth. Top 17 counties out of 67 are getting 3/4 of the growth. Now, 2 things are going to change this, And I like these forecasts. These folks are great. They're as good as they get when you talk about population and demographic forecasting. I love them. But what two things have happened since they put out this forecast? First of all, we had a 2020 census, right? And I call it the 100% count. You can never count 100% of the people, but you got to remember when we get census numbers, what happens? Well, we had a full count in 2020 or in 2010. So in 2011, we got an estimate. In 2012, we got an estimate based on the 2011 estimate. So you stack up a bunch of estimates on top of each other, and this is fine. Statistically, it's fine. They do a really nice job. I'm not criticizing them. But until you do that 100% count, you can't really true it up. You think you know what's going on, but when we get those 2020 numbers, we'll actually know what happened. And trust me, Florida is going to get more congressional seats. We're growing, man. We're killing it. You see what's happened. I mean, one of our biggest issues, and my boss talks about this a lot, is Florida needs to do a lot better job preparing for the next 4 million people than we did for the last 4 million people, right? We got infrastructure, we got water, we got all kind of things that this state needs. But the COVID has actually made Florida more attractive. I'll tell you that part here in just a second. So we don't know what the real population is, and they'll reset this based on that. So the forecast will change for that reason. Another reason it will change is what COVID did to the Florida economy. I'm gonna tell you, I work a lot. I'm a kid from a small county in Alabama. That's where I grew up. Rural economic development has been one of the things that I've really enjoyed working on this last 10 years here in the state of Florida. I love helping those small towns and small counties and the rural areas. Those folks are important. I get a big kick out of talking about rural Florida and Florida's farming situation. And I asked people what they know about it, and they said, well, I think they grow some oranges down there. And that's about all they know about Florida. You got to remember, Florida is either number one or number two in basically every fruit and vegetable in the country. You can grow it in Florida. It's either us or California. It's number one in almost everything. Doesn't matter what it is. Green beans, all the strawberries, all this stuff. So certainly we are a big orange producer. We're a big fruit and vegetable producer. But then I asked people, what is the number one agriculture county in the state of Florida as far as farm receipts? That's how they're, how many dollars do the farmers get? Now, they only get to keep part of that because they've had to pay for fertilizer and seed and tractors and all that stuff. What's the number one county in the state of Florida? Anybody in the audience want to guess here? Palm Beach. Who said that? How do you know that? You used to work in Palm Beach. You're the only person that's ever answered that correctly, and I've been speaking out here for 10 years. So thank you for that. That's awesome. Sure. That's awesome. I'm glad you know that. Anybody want to guess what the number one manufacturing job, number one county that has manufacturing jobs in the state of Florida? Anybody want to guess what that is? This one will stump you. Orlando's big. There's a lot of manufacturing in Orlando. There's a lot in Brevard County. Number one is Miami-Dade. And a lot of people don't realize that. I won't go on with all the stump the audience stuff. What I will do is talk about more challenges for the state of Florida. This one, you see the population. It's going to change. Here's why COVID, let me finish this thought. Here's why COVID is going to change this forecast. More people are moving out into the country. Hey, what happens if you don't have to go in your office every day? You only have to go in once a week or maybe even once a month for a staff meeting. Hey, you can work in Chicago and you can get a direct flight from a lot of Florida, Tampa, Opportunity, Orlando. You can get direct flights almost anywhere in the world, right? Thank you, hospitality industry. They provide that for the state of Florida, and it's great for business. When businesses want to relocate, that's one of the things they look at. Hey, can I get a direct flight to where I go? That's awesome, and we have a lot of that here. So you have to show up once a month. Hey, fly in the night before. and see your friends at the office, do your meeting, fly back home and live on the Gulf Coast, live on the East Coast, live in the country. I say the number one industry that's going to win the game here in Florida is chicken feed salesmen, because people are moving out into the country and they want a few chickens in their yard or whatever. They only have to go in twice a week, once a week. They'll commute an hour or two when they wouldn't have if they had to go in 5 days a week. That's going to spread our population out. It's the first really positive thing that's happened in rural economic development for the country in a while. You got to remember, Florida rural is different from Iowa rural. Iowa rural, you might be 3 or 4 hours away from some city center. In Florida, you're never more than about 90 minutes away, no matter where you are in Florida, from a major airport or a major city center. So Florida is going to win this game, I will guarantee you, and that will bring even more of those people down here. So we got to be ready. We got to be ready for infrastructure. All right, what's another challenge we're facing? You guys all voted on this. If you voted in November, it's Florida's minimum wage. And I spoke a lot about this. I had my grad students at Florida State University analyze what the minimum wage will do for the state of Florida. And you can see the path here. We're going to be at $10 an hour in September of this year. And then it goes up by $1 every year. And then it floats with inflation after that. And I'm an economist. I'm not going to make a political statement here whatsoever. But I want you to realize some of the ramifications. And if you work for this state college that we're sitting in, or if you work in a small business or anywhere in the state of Florida, this is going to affect you. We're all for people making more money. We have a prosperity project at the Chamber Foundation. I don't know any other state chamber that has a prosperity project that has the goal of reducing child poverty in half by 2030. That's a very aggressive goal. Is this going to help that or not? Well, it'll help some people. However, when you set minimum wages substantially higher than the market wage, you do a couple of things. One is you drive people with low skills out of the market. If you're not worth $15 an hour to somebody, you're gonna get the chance to go home, right? It also, and this, as an educator, this is what bothers me the most about this is, because we try to help people get job skills and get them into the workforce to get them and themselves and their kids out of poverty. We've been doing that for quite a long time now. What bothers me about this is it distorts the perceived returns to education. Now that is econo speak, classically. What does that mean? When I talk to business people, I say, look at it this way. If you're a high school kid, you're thinking about what you're going to do. If you think you can get one of those $15 an hour jobs, hey, you've been living at home, your parents have had to give you an allowance, or you've been out mowing yards or something like that, $15 an hour is a lot of money. Are you going to invest in yourself and go to a state college or go get a certification or get on some, track of, getting training if you think you can get that $15 an hour job just by showing up and asking for one? Florida, this is my forecast. I've been in the press saying this all over. So this won't be anything new. Florida will end up being less educated and less globally competitive because of this. Who it'll hurt the worst are people with low skills, people in rural areas, and especially those rural counties that are up against Georgia and Alabama who are staying at $7.25 an hour. So yeah, it's great. Some people will make more money, but I want to caution you this and show you this quote. Came out of the Wall Street Journal. This was an analysis of what the Congressional Budget Office did. And the CBO was looking at if every single state goes to $15 an hour, not just Florida does it by itself. You should agree with me that if Florida does it by itself, which we have, it's going to have an even bigger impact down here because people can flee and go to other states. Businesses can flee. As many as 3 people will lose their job for every person you get out of poverty by doing this. So it sounds great. We all want people to make more money, but this is going to be a big challenge to the state of Florida. I will tell you, it's going to have a big issue. All right, why do I care so much? It's because back to the 3rd grade reading level. How do you get people out of poverty? You do 2 things. You help their parents get job skills, and you help kids with education. So one of the things, I could show you the 3rd grade reading scores as a percentage, but it's a lot more impactful when I tell you 3,252 kids in Pinellas County are not reading at grade level. That's an opportunity. More than 91,066 Florida kids aren't reading at grade level right now. And you can see it by county here. You know, y'all aren't in the top. Certainly the bigger counties are in there. But how do you address this? You know, this is something that we have to think about. You think about poverty, you know, if we took all those 829,342 kids living in poverty in Florida, more than half of them live in just 150 zip codes. Now, we started talking about this. Our CEO, Mark Wilson, and I started talking about this to every business group that we talk to. And people says, oh, you know, maybe you shouldn't say that stuff. And it's like, hey, we get to do anything we want to. We're going to talk about this. And now the businesses have said, thank you for talking about this. Chambers, local chambers have adopted zip codes and those things that we've asked them to do to start to address this. How do you reach that goal? Well, you could reach that, you know, killing poverty, half of Florida's poverty, by just killing it in 150 of Florida's 983 zip codes. And so we show you where they are. And if you want a map of where they are in your area, I can tell you 3 of those zip codes are in southern Pinellas County. And I'm going to show you where they are. Every single county for the last 2 years has had a map on the floridachamber.com website. If you type in Google Florida Chamber Poverty Map, you'll come right to this page. And we're not trying to shame people. We're trying to, you know, let them know where the issues are. And so this is a heat map. The darker areas have the highest percentage of under 18 poverty. So for every zip code, 983 of them, every county, you can see the zip code number at the top, the number of kids living in poverty in the middle, and the under 18 poverty rate. Now, y'all have gotten better. You're down to 16.9% in Pinellas County in child poverty. That's good. 20.1% is the state average. So y'all are better. You improved. That's why that metric is green. And now there's 26,400 kids. Now, how do you make the connection between that, getting people education, you know, what to concentrate on? That's what we get asked all the time. Well, where do I start? And so what we've done is we've asked business people to take a look at their commute. And Dr. Williams, the president of St. Pete College, has done this, and she did it on one of our board meetings, which was awesome. She told us the zip code she lives in and the zip code she works in. And so what we traced on the map was the path and the schools that were along the way. How do we do that? Well, people ask me, what did you do when you were sequestered during COVID? And I mean, I was happily sequestered. I didn't want to go to the office. I was very productive being at home. What I did was I came up with something called the Florida Gap Map. And you can see it at thefloridagapmap.org. There's exactly one of these in the entire country. And I invented it. And why? Is because I want people to see that connection between child poverty, third grade reading scores. So if you go to the floridagapmap.org, pull down Pinellas County, you can see what it looks like here. This is a screenshot. This is not a live shot, but you can do it at home if those of you that are watching. And what you do is you lay your mouse over one of the zip codes. You lay it on 33711 and take a screenshot like I did. It'll show you there's 1,116 kids living in poverty in that zip code. And that means 33.0% of those kids are living in poverty. So now you know where they live, right? And you can see it no matter where you are in the state of Florida. What are all those other dots with numbers on them? Well, that's every school. Every public school in the state of Florida is located where it should be. You lay your mouse over it and up pops this. It says Pinellas Park Elementary School, and I just chose that at random. Reading score, third grade reading score is 34. That means 34% of those kids are reading at grade level. This is long-term economic prosperity right here, because it'll tell you that there's approximately 63 kids not reading at grade level in that school. What does the chamber ask? What am I going to ask you? Adopt a classroom, not an entire school. Adopt a classroom. Help those kids learn how to read. And oh, by the way, don't wait till they're in third grade before you help them read at third grade level. You can start at second grade. You can start in first grade. You can help a kindergarten. There's a lot of options, even in the COVID world, of what you can do here. And so what I'm telling you is, Florida's outlook for business is good. More people are moving in. We got to be careful as not let population growth become our economic development scheme. We have to get ahead of them before that. But, you know, Florida's got a great opportunity here. One is we've got information that nobody has, thanks to the gap map. You know, every school in your community. And I'm going to tell you this one story. I'm sure I'm going to be running out of time here. If I'm not already, I'll check. Actually, we do have time. So I'll tell you this story. I showed the gap map to my own county commissioner. I'm in Leon County. I'm up in the county commission. Dr. Parrish, tell us what you know. You know, it was one of those things. So I brought these kind of maps, and I had to make them manually. I had to, you know, get a PowerPoint slide of the under 18 poverty rate and literally put in every single school and what their third grade reading score is manually. Yeah, it took forever. I mean, these things took forever. That's why I wanted to automate it with this. But I showed them all the schools in our area. And first of all is, why is the Florida Chamber, you know, talking about child poverty? And I said, because we can do anything we want to, and that's what we want to talk about. So they didn't like that answer, but and what it made them uncomfortable. And I'm not trying to make people uncomfortable. It's just, if you don't know, you don't know. I drive by a school every single day. You know, I live out in the country. I live more than 20 miles out in the country. There's a little K-8 school, you know, that I drive by every single day. And I see those kids. I see them get off the bus. I see them get picked up on the bus on the way. You know, you got to think about those kids that are in third grade this year. What are they? They're the class of 2030, right? And so these are the kids we're expecting, you know, those kids to start running the state of Florida. You know, what if we could help them hit those milestones? Third grade reading on time. The probability of graduating from high school goes way up. Probability of staying out of trouble goes way up. If you're not struggling in school and you enjoy school, you're much more likely to want to go to school, right? So anyway, I show this to my county commissioner, and there's a school in there that has a 29 third grade reading score. 29% of those kids are reading at grade level. So this commissioner, I'll call him pompous because this is a public area. I call him other names sometimes. But he said, you know, said Dr. Parrish, what we should do is that school that's got a 29%, only 29% of their kids reading at grade level, we should quit giving them tax money and quit taxing the parents that send their kids to that school. Anybody want to guess what I said? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. A school score, a low school score doesn't mean it's a bad school. It could be a miracle. They got 29% of those kids reading at grade level. And if you know this school and you know this neighborhood, I would say that it is a miracle they got that many. Do not make that, you know, fallacy argument that says a low scored school is a bad school. That's probably some of the best people that you've got. You don't know if those kids showed up hungry. You don't know if their parents ever read to them ever, you know, before they sent them to school. So, you know, but what's been rewarding is the business community has responded. It's like, I mean, we get all this, it can't be true. And then 2, oh my God, I didn't know that. And number 3 is, what can we do? And so what you can do is help some kid learn how to read. That is long-term economic development. You know, spend a little time. Maybe your chamber wants to join this. Maybe you want some other group that you're a part of wants to join this. But anyway, that's all I'm going to ask for you guys to do. I've enjoyed being here. I know I'm going to be able to take a couple of questions here, but thanks for having me this morning.
Thank you. I certainly learned a lot during all of this. I think what you said, which was so powerful to me, is this thread of how are we going to prepare for the next 4 million people who are coming to Florida? And then if you tie that thread with the 80% of women who have left the workforce, I think I have that number right, the impact of the minimum wage increasing, the impact of education. I would love to know your thoughts on the hit to the school system in general. And then finally, how we deal with the poverty pockets. That is all going to shape what Florida looks like, no matter if we're doing good right now or at all. Can you expand on some of those topics in this thread?
Sure, that's a great question. And, you know, I think what everybody needs to realize first is Florida is the first to really recognize this. And I have to give my boss, CEO Mark Wilson, a lot of credit. He and former Speaker of the House, Will Weatherford, have really taken this on as something that they both want to do. I'm just kind of the operational guy. I'm the guy that makes the maps and does all that stuff and transmits the message to business people. But when business people see, one of the great things, when I show that 150 zip code slide and say half of the issue are in these 150 zip codes, businesses see that as an opportunity. It's like, oh, wow, that's great. It's not spread out all over Florida, even though it is. You could take the richest zip codes in Florida and there's going to be some child poverty in it. But they know where to start. They know where to attack. We encourage them to work in a zip code where they're comfortable with. It's where you live or where you work or somewhere in between. Because then you have to look at it every single day, don't you? And you have to think about those kids, and I do every single day. The Chamber Foundation did a project to help those kids in the school I drive by every day. There's another lady that works with me who drives by the same school. And it can be as simple as buying books. When we get kids to enjoy reading, that is one of the big humps here. And look at it, once again, if they're happy in school, they stay in school. The more you go to school, the better off you're going to be. You got to remember, Florida runs on sales taxes. About 79% of Florida's general revenue comes from you guys spending money out there on taxable goods and businesses spending it on taxable goods. It's in our best interest, so we don't have to ever, put in an income tax for us, everybody that we know, to be making more money, right? So it really aligns the incentives of the government. It aligns the business people and aligns people's own incentives to do better for themselves. And now that Florida, knows, because they've been listening to the Florida Chamber and the Chamber Foundation, we're actually ahead of every other state, I believe, in addressing the problem.
Thank you for that. I also thinking about what you said about the rural area and the impact of parents and children combined in terms of educating them. And so my practical thought process is, if we know that we're likely not going to get young people to invest in their education if they're going to get a higher livable wage, then do we need to put more emphasis on workforce, and what does that do to our economy? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
That's a great question. I work with the workforce people, Career Source, and others all around the state all the time. As a matter of fact, one of the research projects I'm working on right now, I'm going to be very pleased to announce the results in June, because it really looks at those folks, maybe in the rural areas, maybe they're not. Maybe they got out of high school and got a job. Maybe they're a server now at a restaurant and they just lost their job. Well, they never had time to go back to school because they were working. There were so many tourists coming in here. They were always busy working. They could never get away. Now's the opportunity to help those folks. And so we're doing a project that keys on those adult learners. And you don't have to be 60 like I am. They can be 25, 30, 35. Anybody that's interested in getting back to the workforce, we're not only going to be able to show them what jobs are increasing and what the salaries of those jobs are, we'll be able to help them figure out what skills they need to transition to those jobs. It's going to be something like nobody's ever done in the state of Florida. I'm going to be very excited. It's going to help our state colleges. It's going to help our technical schools. It's going to help high school counselors. But you're right. People will, $15 an hour jobs are a pretty shiny thing when you're, grew up like me. And this is a true story. I wanted to be an engineer because I heard they made $30,000 a year when you got out of school, and that's exactly $15 an hour. My first job didn't pay that, I will tell you, because I wasn't an engineer. I was an economist. But that's a very powerful incentive, for kids. And it's difficult to take some kid that's 18 years old and convince them that they should invest in themselves. So it really is going to have an impact. But it is another opportunity for our state colleges. Maybe they get out in the job market and they find out, hey, there's not very many of those $15 an hour jobs. Maybe I better invest in myself. I think that's going to help us a little bit on that.
I also have a question about our new normal, which we hope doesn't stay forever, but we have to deal with the reality of it. Some people will not be ready to move into a traditional workspace anymore. and some people won't have a choice, and some people will have that choice. So you mentioned the fact that, people had the opportunity to work from home or different spaces, and they didn't really want to go back to work. And now we're getting properly vaccinated. We have a lot of our workforces going back into a level of normalcy. How do you think that impact is going to be moving forward with people who are now choosing this hybrid style? I know our ISPS think tank and the college has to deal with that now in terms of people who have now become accustomed to not getting in their car, not going to work or to programs, and not having to deal with childcare or adult care or family care as they're doing this, and they have become accustomed to becoming more efficient in their homes. How do you think that's going to impact our economy?
Well, I think now you got to remember a lot of companies in Florida are run by people my age. And we thought, hey, we got to be able to see these people and make sure they're working. That's why they all have to come into the office, right? Because we weren't comfortable with that. It's not that there wasn't telecommuting before. It's just COVID accelerated it like no other. Now you realize that people can't be productive at home, and now we have the technology to do that, and it's proven, and I think everybody understands that. I believe what will end up in the situation very soon is those people with skills will have the power to choose what job they want, and they'll choose a job where they don't have to go in the office if they can get one. You got to think about the travel costs, not just the commute costs in time, but the wear and tear on your car and those kind of things. I would be glad with making less money and being able to work from home all the time. Probably a lot of people would choose that as well. So, but I believe the power is always going to be with the talent. If somebody demands to work from home and they're talented and you want them, you'll make accommodation for them. And especially as people my age start to retire and a younger crew that went through COVID saw that, hey, and a lot of jobs can go home. We've got companies saying that they're not going to go back. They're selling their offices and letting their leases expire. They're going to run 100% from home. A little concerned about that. It's kind of hard to train new employees. There's going to be some issues about that. But I see a lot of companies having a very much smaller footprint of an office, but continuing to have an office, and people come in maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays or something like that. There'll be a lot of different variations out there.
I want to send some questions to the audience after this last question, but I wanted to ask, do you ever see there was getting more growth with those zip codes that you mentioned that have significant gaps based on your research?
Say that first part again. Do I see more
If they're
growth?
going to catch up at all. Yeah.
Yeah, how they can catch up. Okay, that's a great question because in a lot of cases, we have generational poverty. And when you grow up in generational poverty, fortunately, I didn't, survival, becomes the order of the day, not thinking about the future. I can't remember the term they use, the terror of the immediate, or, I can't remember the term of art that they use. So it really does take somebody who, helping somebody see. I've seen a lot of programs, that are out there. We've got one in Leon County that we use that I've been, part of and a mentor to. But it really is a one person at a time situation. Finding somebody who really wants to do better and helping them get that social capital, some contacts out in the business world, especially helpful, where they can do simple things like, hey, where do I get my car fixed, and those kind of things. But certainly there's people out there that want to do better, that, are willing, and there's a lot of people out there willing to help them. Making that connection is sometimes difficult. So as people are working in their communities, identifying those people, and literally it can be one at a time, and then their friends see, hey, this person did this, and now they've got a good job, and then their kids see that as well, that, hey, my parent is now going to work every day, and they begin to expect that they're going to have to go to work every day. It's very difficult. I'm not going to tell you for any reason we think this is easy. It really is. But when you have the nonprofits, you have the government agencies, you got the philanthropic folks, and you've got the business people all combined, we together can make a big, big difference. And you see it already in some parts of the state of Florida.
Thank you. I would like our audience to ask any questions they might have. Sure.
All right, great question. The question, if you didn't hear it out in the audience, is, with people maybe not going back to the office, what are we going to do with that office space? Well, there's a couple of things happening out there. One, the people that had offices that might have given you X number of square feet now are going to have to give you a bigger space, right? Because of social distancing and people wanting, kind of demanding that. So even if you let half of your workforce go home, your footprint isn't going to go down by half. It'll go down by less than half. But you got to remember, during COVID, so many people have seen Florida as a positive place to be, that I believe, that we can fill up those office spaces with new companies that are moving to Florida from these other states. You see it in the high tax states, especially over the past couple of years, and even, some of the shutdowns we've had, businesses going out of business during COVID. You've seen that's provided an opportunity for somebody who's always wanted to run a business to finally get a space somewhere where they wanted one. And so it certainly is a difficult transition there, but I don't believe, I saw some of the national forecast, office space demand down by 5 or 10% is about the average of some of the forecast, but I think Florida is going to be able to use up that office space. Right now, certainly there's a lot that's being rented and people are still paying rent on, but half of their employees at home. You'll see more subletting, where it's possible, but it won't happen immediately. But I believe that Florida is going to be a lot better off than most states in refilling that office space. But let's be honest, you're not, compared to pre-COVID, you don't see the shovels in the ground building brand new office space right now. It ain't going to happen. People are just waiting to see what's going to happen before they plunk down a bunch of money to do that. Once the dust kind of settles and we see what the new post-COVID normal looks like, you'll see some of it, but probably not as much as what we would have pre-COVID. Yeah, more people filling in, but you'll also see we had this happen in Tallahassee, tearing the roof off of the old mall and, having a walkable shopping center, and you can build multifamily, apartments or condos or something like that around here. I think that's what's going to happen to some of the retail. We thought that maybe the old Kmart's and Sears and those would get redeveloped as distribution centers. You can't really do that at scale. The commercial people I talked to, so you can tear down the building and build one from the ground up. That'll happen to some of them. But different pieces of property, warehousing is still really hot right now. Office space soft until it settles out. But the retail, you got to look at what's happening in the Florida legislature right now. We're about to pass the Main Street Fairness Act, which means that those out-of-state companies that were sending stuff in here and not collecting sales tax are going to have to start doing it. Florida and Missouri are the only last two states that don't have that. That'll actually help retail. When people can no longer just go try on something in one store and order it online so they don't have to pay sales tax, they won't be able to use that loophole anymore. So that will help retail more than any other state, I think, in Florida, because people, hey, they've been sitting at home. They're going to want to get out. A retail, restaurant, livable, walkable areas, I think, are going to be hot in the future.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your time, Dr. Parrish. And you're welcome back anytime. I know that the Chamber's happy and ISPS certainly is too. We're going to finish and just say a little bit about ISPS and our upcoming programs. Our next program we have is on guardianship series. We did a 3-part series in light of COVID, and all of our information, our events are on our website. All of our programs are recorded. And in our next slide, please. We have the program of the reality of running for office. And as you noted, I guess we have to start preparing people to run for office. So this is a very timely program. And I think our president will be happy because I think that was at the suggestion of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. And I think we have one more slide. And we have a conversation with U.S. Ambassador Delano Lewis to talk about what it's like to be an ambassador. So that's coming up. And we may have one more program in April. And looks like that's it. We have many programs that we're preparing for. So with the we invite you to continue to follow ISPS. And thank you all for your time and coming out in person. This really means a lot. It was a big goal of ours to get this done. And again, it's nice to see you. Have a good day.